I'm from Appyway. Our mission is to help cities thrive from the curb up. You may well have heard of excuse me. You may well have heard of us before as Appy Parking. We rebranded on the basis that it's not just about parking, but you've got to understand how to work around your cities in the first place. So this is why we're curb obsessed. There's a supply problem in cities, and there's a demand problem with the vehicles. So local authorities in the room, obviously you have to manage your curbside, and obviously the logistics providers and suppliers in the room obviously want to be able to deliver their services into the curbside and into the firms they're trying to supply. I make no bones about saying the third point down the left-hand side, curbside abuse from fleets and ride-hailing. That's obviously the sort of experience that local authorities are suggesting that they're understanding, because it's not just about you pulling over. Yes, you've got some opportunity to unload, etc., and do your curbside business there, but it is about, as you pull over there, you constrain the highways and the congestion and the circling and deconflicting with vulnerable road users that may contain, loading bays, etc. aside. And on the right-hand side, obviously there, again, there's some confusing curbside rules and restrictions that those local authorities put on you. So how do you know what where you should be and what you should be doing? So there's some common problems. There's no standardised curbside data standard and map. Obviously, that's what we have developed to solve some of those solutions. Lines and signs. I think when we heard from Bucks County Council, about 80% of what's actually out on the street is actually what they've got in their database as their TRO database. We look at that, and I think that's actually probably pretty good in terms of 80%. It's probably less in terms of some of the authorities we work with when we go in there and actually do that sort of integration piece of what they think they've got out on the street by surveying and actually what they've got in their locker. So some of the text-based orders, some are digital because they're on a PDF, not quite digital, and others are using existing supplier databases. This, apologies, very small slide, but you'll get the slides afterwards. Just to showcase, on the left-hand side, I think that's Herefordshire, talking about trying to put a new traffic regulation order to create another loading bay or to change it, etc. If you can read that, it says the time to take is a minimum of 2 years from application if it's the local authority doing it, whereas if it's actually a private supplier, it could be less, 3 months. But it takes to go through the whole implementation process, the consultation, etc., 8 months, and costs about £4,000 because we still apparently have to put an advert in the local paper because that's where we are. So it's just a way of just identifying that's out of their 70 or 80 page how to put a TRO together guide. And on the right hand side is Islington's. And again, if you've got any time to look at that, you'll see the difference between loading time, observation time, etc. varies. So as a freight and logistics provider or a servicing vehicle, I applaud you if you can go through all of those in the 450 towns and cities across the UK. You don't have to do that, obviously. That's why I'm here. I'm saying we've done that for you. So we've done the base mapping there, the regulation mapping, and we can apply the other layers, as you see over there, the parking data, so where you can park, where you can't park, what the restrictions are, what the prices are if you're wanting to stay a bit of time, and we get some data insights in terms of the use of those tools as well, if you want to put some sensors down into those bays. And then, of course, we can take payments, and I'll go on to an area where we've done that in the past. So, as I said, we sort of sit in the middle in this sort of, excuse the sort of silicon roundabout sort of GovTech space, where we sit in between helping local authorities understand and digitise their curb space and curbside, understanding it, and then there's a tool called Mapper to help them manage that process. And on the right-hand side, as you see there, through our API and SDKs, you can take all that information and can push it out to fleets, so then you've got in your heads-up display or in your driver app, in your route and optimization software, you've got all the latest information about where you can, where you can't, what you can do, how long you can stay, etc. That's a very busy slide that just sort of says all of that stuff, but there's all those layers in there. On the right-hand side, it says fleets SDKs and APIs and all mobile appy type stuff, all the technical stuff that you can see in the heads-up display of your mobile app for yourself. And on the left-hand side in the pink, it's like what we can do for local authorities. We can help you manage your curbside. We can do the public consultation through the tools that we have as well. So that again cuts down some of that potential 8 months, as you saw, time frame. So we can help on those sort of stuff, and then Mapper manages that. So to the point about whether I think it was from Allocate here, talked about desired orders rather than actually sealed orders. All of our stuff is based on the sealed orders, so it's what's out there and what should be out on the streets. You've got the most up-to-date data set there. That's a screenshot of what you might look at through an API. Obviously you can subsume it differently, but it says here's where you can park between these hours and how much it's going to cost, etc. So if you were looking as perhaps a small fleet provider or a white van man, as it were, trying to deliver something on the street, thinking I'm not going to pull in there and constrain the highways. However, I know that if I can go just around the corner, I can stay for 3 or 4 hours and I can hand walk it, or I can get on a bike or whatever else you want to do. So opportunities without having to do anything different to get micro consolidation hubs, etc. into cities. Why do we do this? Well, we think now the sort of short-term piece is that we can help cities transform their parking assets into a digital interface, so it's an enabling underpinning layer. And then obviously further into the future, we can do some stuff now with you guys, but also further into the future when autonomous vehicles come along, as to help them understand what they can and what they can't do. And it's a sort of, can drive some of those policy decisions for local authorities about how to understand their curbside existing and how to understand it in the new environment. That's not quite available yet, but it's an idea, is the fact you can have in your heads-up display that says, here's where you can park, here's where you can't park, for your particular trip purpose and the type of vehicle you are. So as in the future, as you go through a geofence, you can say, I'm an electric vehicle, we know your trip purpose, we know what you want to do, here's where you can park, it's gone green, someone's actually put a skip in there or something else. I'd get that sort of feedback from the One Network stuff at Elgin. I'd find out what the latest stuff was, integrate that, and then you'd be able to see it was green, it's gone red, where's the next nearest green one, it'll navigate you to it. Just a quick piece on innovation and proof of concepts. Sorry for the POCs, for those who don't understand what they are. I talked about the tool that we have to manage that. So it's a future-ready digital traffic management order type environment. We call it Mapper. It's a lot easier. It was developed with thanks for our colleagues at Innovate UK and with Cambridgeshire County Council, Milton Keynes Council and Coventry City Council, who, as I described earlier, all had very different base levels of how they had their traffic regulation orders captured. Some had text-based, some had base maps they were using, and some had PDFs. So actually trying to integrate that to say, actually, how can we get a product that serves a wide variety of local authorities, allows them to manage their TROs better, and also making new ones as well. And the 83% more efficient than the current other operators out there was a quote from Cambridgeshire County Council, said it was 83% more efficient to use us than to use an existing provider they had as well. So hence why they're changing to come to us. This is a world first. Apologies again for the load of weight on that, but again, it's a takeaway you can read. Effectively in Harrogate, we've done the full suite. So what we've done is put sensors. Sensors are probably about this size down into 2,156 on and off street car parking bays in Harrogate, which allows then any one of you guys who's got the consumer app, the Appy parking app, hence where we come from, to be able to plan your route, say where you want to go, navigate you to it. As you get in there, it makes a Bluetooth connection between the sensor that's actually on the street and into your phone. Starts your parking session. You can go off and do whatever you like, and when you come back, you drive off, the Bluetooth connection is made, it's paid by the minute, and then you get a nice receipt, as for those of you who use Uber, etc., you'll see. So it's a way of taking the planning, the navigation, and the trip purpose, and also the length of stay and the payment for the consumer, and for Harrogate Borough Council and North Yorkshire County Council, they get to understand more about how their parking infrastructure is being used. I have to tell this example. Apparently in Harrogate there's a world famous Betty's Tea Room, and as you can imagine, the 4 or 5 parking spaces outside that are very well used. but the ones 250 yards down either side aren't very well used. And currently, before we came in there, all they would do is get a ticket from one of the parking bays, so people would sit there and go, they know they're in this zone. Now they're looking at it going, the ones at the end aren't very well used, can we put those for car club, electric vehicles, Amazon lockers? It starts to drive some challenges around how they want to utilise their space. Do they shoulder surf pricing wise or whatever else it is to try and get utilisation spread across it? On days when it's particularly potentially a bit bad air day, then you can turn around and start closing off some of those things, and they've got a dashboard back in their UTMC that can actually pull that information together. So we provide that for them. A bit of future. Currently working with Transport for the West Midlands on pulling together some of their 5G availability and real-time detection. So utilising 5G infrastructure and cameras on vehicles to go around and be able to say, oh, someone's driven past past the space, recognising it's a space, feed it back into the system and say it's now available, it's a space for parking, which will allow them people to start real-time, upgrading the maps without having to deploy sensors into that space. So that's something that we're working on right now. And another project, again, thank you to Innovate UK for their support on this one. Working with the Jaguar Land Rover, Coventry City Council and Milton Keynes Council to do what we call the project we call Park AV, which is about automated valet parking. So in the world of robo-taxis or connectivity, when you've got automated vehicles, effectively, as they drop you off, if you can see it from there, there's a person about halfway up on the curb side there. They drop close to their point of interest, which could be, it could be a shop, it could be a museum, it could be a church, whatever else it is. The vehicle then has to go and do something with itself. A lot of people think that because autonomous vehicles will just drive around, because it's cheaper to drive around than it is to park, there'll just be loads of circling. Will it make congestion worse? Will it make the cities really congested and have a problem with those? But actually, it won't be a pollution thing because they're electric vehicles. Well, actually, through this feasibility study we've done with there, what we're trying to do is turn the parking element on its head and go to a sort of a wholesale pricing model, where actually those vehicles will actually drive into an off-street parking facility where they'll get serviced, charged, cleaned, etc., to allow themselves to do that and then come back out onto the system. So actually we've been able to prove by working with local authorities that there's a new business model in this space, and also a way of working with an OEM to try and understand what they want to get out of, whether they have a whizzy button that says, go park yourself. So those are just a couple of examples of what we can do, but effectively, as a curbside management company, are here to help local authorities understand and look after their asset better, and allow fleets through our APIs and SDK to understand where they can, where they can't, how long they can do that, etc., which feeds into route optimization software, etc., to make more efficient and less polluting vehicles. I think that's it. Happily take any questions.